podcast. I'm Jaco van der Merwe. I'm joined by Mark Jones. As so often these days, we get straight into another Chinese car. We've covered this, the latest Chery sub-brand Jetour in South Africa. Now we look a bit deeper into the offerings they've got. We've driven the Dashing, and you've driven the X70 Plus now in a top spec derivative. It's called Deluxe. We'll get to the pricing and all of that now. At first, being still under the Chery umbrella, when these Jetours were announced, I thought the Dashing is very significant in its styling, very out there, and I thought the sibling is a bit funny. It's not as, lavish, the styling and everything, and it looks a bit like a Chery Tiggo 7 in my opinion. Not a lot, but it does. And then when I actually thought about it, with the 7 seats it's got a bit of a niche position there almost, Mark. 484,000. It doesn't really have a direct competitor at this stage, because the Tiggo 7 is a 5-seater and the Tiggo 8, which only starts at over 600, is a 7-seater. So it's not cannibalizing anything in its own stable. And if you look around and you look at more traditional 7-seaters, you have things like the Honda BRV, which is over 500 and it's a lot smaller. Engine isn't as powerful. And then you've got, the Suzuki Ertiga, you've got the Toyota Rumian, but you've even got a Renault Driver, which is a 7-seater. But I mean, they are tiny inside with not a hell of a lot of performance. This X70 Plus is a bit of a comprehensive package.
Yeah, on paper. Styling is I liked it, and on paper it presents quite well, and the space is good. I looked at it, it is substantial. It's not a small car. The two rear sort of seats, the number seats 6 and 7, there's enough space to put tiny humans in there, and or small humans, where some of these other 7-seaters you mentioned, I mean, you can't even put a poodle in there if it lets its legs down. It's 7 seats in name only. So the X70's got a lot going on. I mean, it looks okay, it presents well in terms of spec, rides well, does most things well, but as with all Chinese cars, there's a bit of a but.
Leading up to that but, should we say, drivetrain, it's the very familiar Chery 1.5 turbo petrol engine.
Yeah.
It produces
115 kilowatts, 230 newton meters of torque, so it's not massively sort of tuned. We see those engines can go substantially more in horsepower, and I have no doubt they're all exactly the same. But this is in a nice mild state to tune. So, it's enough to move the vehicle.
And staying at that price, which we mentioned is serious value, it doesn't offer those seriously comprehensive spec lists we've seen on the top Cherys and a J-Coup. Of course, we're talking here about Tiggo 8s, it goes over 600. J-Coup, which is also up there. Obviously a motor, especially the C9, which is... So, can I say they've cut down, not really cut down a bit, but can we say it's basically a slightly lower spec car, but still very well spec'd? I mean, the one you drove, it had, for instance, cruise control. It didn't have adaptive cruise control, but it's got your lane keep assists and all of those things. And I mean, your dual screens, your fully digital instrument cluster, your big infotainment screen, and I think it's imitation leather it's got throughout.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's not badly spec'd at all.
No, in actual fact, if you look at it, it looks exactly like the ones with all the ADAS, advanced driving assisted systems. So it looks that way. It kind of feels good. Thankfully, maybe, I preferred, some of that stuff is not there. So you don't have pings and pongs, and you look in your side mirror and it tells you pay attention, and if you don't do that, then it says you need a brake. So some of the annoying stuff is missing, which is great. I mean, we in South Africa, I know we need all the safety we can get, but those systems are intrusive sometimes, and you can't switch them off enough, or they come back on every time you start the car. So that is a massive plus. I think for the average person at the price, they're not going to feel that there isn't these things anymore. So yeah, I'm okay with what it offers.
And then just getting more to that, but not things we haven't that's foreign on a Chinese car. It is about as far as you can get, drivetrain, tuning issues.
Yeah, I must be honest, I don't understand it. I mean, I have no doubt because they probably all come from the same place, and it's probably the same guy that he's happy with the calibration. And I know every time we mention this, the Chinese manufacturers want to pull their hair out because their logic is, you guys are too worried about drive and fuel and calibration. And I mentioned it to you, my wife would probably get in the car and go, oh, look at the space, look how pretty it is, look at all the features. And she would drive it and go, it's okay, and adapt maybe to what it's got. But it's really, this throttle thing, I mean, the X70 has eco and sport. There's no middle mode. And in sport, the throttle's still very dull to start with, and then it really wants to wake up when you have wheel spin going on. It is responsive on the open road, fair enough. But in eco mode, which is the mode I chose to drive it in more because I didn't want that wheel spinny feel, it's then kind of dozy, and it stays dozy, but at least it's easy to drive. It's those anomalies. If they could nail that, I'm telling you, I'd look at that and go, for 484 grand, wow, look at this car, it drives great, feels great. It's an annoying feature for us that drive a multitude of cars. Manufacturers that have the similar engines and turbo engines with double clutch gearboxes, those things are smooth and they're hyper quick when they need to be, but in the Chinese cars, they just react rather slowly, and it blunts what really could be a massively, almost a perfect package.
And just, you've got a very interesting little story when you wanted to refuel the car and you couldn't find your...
Well, yeah, we pride ourselves on not reading the owner's manual because we know everything, it's that, and you want to figure out where you touch and push everything, because that's half our job, to see how easy it is. We don't get a proper customer handover, and we don't want it. So let's just put that on the table. Whenever a manufacturer says, hey, we'll come and deliver the car and we'll give you a half an hour rundown, we're like, no, we're not interested, we'll do it ourselves. And we normally figure all this stuff out. But I sat and I went through that car and I tried to read the manual, and I could not find the little button to open the flap. I then pushed on the flap, it didn't open. I had Charles Bosch, our digital online guy who knows everything about everything, and he couldn't, and we sat there very perplexed. So eventually we had to place a call, much to our disdain, to the PR company of Jetour and say, listen, help, we can't fill our car. And I must be honest, shock and horror, the lady said, no, it's no problem, you just pull up the front carpet, which is very well fitted and whatever, and when you pull that up, hidden on the side, sort of by your foot, not under the dash or anything, there's this little lever that opens the fuel cap. So let me tell you, it's properly hidden away. I don't know who thought of that clever idea, but yeah, I did get it open. I did manage to refuel it, and life went on, but it was just one of those quirky things.
I had a very similar moment with Charles also recently. We couldn't find the hazard switch. I think it was in the Moda C9. We looked everywhere and we gave up. We said this car doesn't have one. And then my wife said, oh, I saw it somewhere. There we go. Yeah. Right next to the sunroof slider. Yeah. I've never seen it there in a car, but yeah, well.
It's those little disconnects that we can smile and laugh at. Yes. It's like the translation. I've been trying to scroll between the ODO, like you get a main ODO overall reading, then you get a trip A and a trip B. I've used every haptic button I can find in the car, and it gives me instant consumption and the overall kilometers I've driven for that trip, and it stays like that. But the moment you switch the car on and off, the sort of trip consumption just resets. So I can't really tell you how much fuel this car is using. I haven't seen a number over 9.6, so it hasn't quite gone beyond 10 ever yet, even with our testing. So the little 115 kilowatt package is quite light on fuel from what I can see. you'd only really know that when you fill it up properly, and maybe there's something lost in translation, but I've tried. There's no AB unless it's hiding in the roof. It's those little quirks that sort of, and then it says power something left. You got to use a bit of translation to figure stuff out. But again, if you buy a Chinese car, I think you kind of half understand that. It annoys the hell out of me, but it might not annoy the hell out of somebody who's spending 480 grand and getting this, what I think is a pretty good seven-seater.
Yes. So yeah, obviously people doing that, they will have the little handover of an hour, maybe 3 hours.
Yeah.
They would all be willing, and they'll have the salesman on call, the salesperson on call for the next week or two, figuring them all out. But I mean, if they're thinking with their heads and they're comparing that to what they get elsewhere, then like we said, it's a very good package.
Agreed.
It is a very, very good package and very good value for money, and almost a little niche at the moment with that 7-seater in that space.
Yeah, and you can kind of understand why, we got Cherry, we got a Moda, JQ, now Jetour, they're the same people. And you kind of, well, why do you keep bringing more cars? But this one slots in somewhere in the middle of all of this. So I think they're onto something, and I think it's going to do relatively well for the average person. For me, I kind of want to take a rope and hang myself, but as you know, we are these people that think we know everything and we drive these cars, but good package, value for money.
Well, there's a lot more coming out of the Cherry brand. Not long to go before the launch of the Cherry Tiggo Cross. We've got a JQ J5 coming, which slots in underneath the 7. Also the 6 electric the J6 electric at some stage.
Yeah.
And also speaking of Jetour, a smaller one, an X50 coming out at some stage.
Yeah, and I think a Moda is going to bring a C3. It's talking about. So yeah, there's a lot of activity happening. Man, are they really, the SUV onslaught continues, and it's sadly the likes of the traditional VWs, Hyundais, Kias. These guys are taking hits because these SUVs keep coming, and they are going to improve. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, we'll keep you up to date with all those Cherry products and every other Chinese product as always. But thank you very much for listening to us this week. If you like the podcast, go and like it. You can share it, or even better, follow the Citizens YouTube channel, and then you can listen to us every week by default. Thank you very much for listening to us this week. Cheers.